Kerry, thanks for your time. Changing times for the fire service.
Absolutely, changing times over the last decade. Campaign fires, 2002, 2006, 2008, terrible fires. But now, going into a fire season, perhaps even more extreme than what we've seen before. But within all that, there are learning opportunities for the CFA, there are learning opportunities for fire service, and I think you'll find we're up to the task.
Now, Kerry, you're not only CFA chairman, but you're an experienced firefighter as well. Just tell me briefly, how did the Black Saturday fires affect you?
An aged firefighter, but I still don the yellow overalls from time to time. Black Saturday affected me by realising, I think, that Ash Wednesday was not the benchmark for all the worst fires you could have in Victoria. This was somewhat worse again, and I think fire service will have to find new ways to combat those threats.
Now, obviously, this is an ongoing story. How is it impacting on the volunteers and the staff at the CFA?
Well, there's no doubt that it is impacting on staff and volunteers. I think people think that when the fires were over in March, that was the end of the issue from our point of view. But clearly there's an enormous amount of work to be done. We've just finished our operational debrief on all the things we think we could have improved and could have done better on, and feeding that into the system is a time of intense work. Coming forward in another month or so, we'll be into fuel reduction in a big way, a bigger way than perhaps ever before. And I think we're a bit stretched, but you'll find when the fire season hits, we'll be there.
A lot of work on board, and I guess you're very proud of your troops.
An extraordinary effort, I've got to say. The number of incidences on that particular Black Saturday, which was held to be that fires would be unfightable, was extraordinary. Sure, we lost some, and it's a tragedy that we lost some and didn't do as well in some cases as what we would have wanted to. But overall, the effort from the CFA to respond from all over the state was an extraordinary effort and something I'll never forget.
And of course, we've got a Royal Commission in train. How is this helping prepare the way?
Well, we in our own right are preparing our way going forward as to the things we think we'll have to do differently. But we've always approached the Royal Commission very positively. We've done some preliminary work ourselves, but we're anxiously awaiting the findings of the Commission, and you'll find we'll be extremely enthusiastic in taking on those issues that come from the Commission, and I think that'll be to the benefit of all Victorians.
Let's talk about innovation for a moment. Take this truck for instance, there'd been nothing like that when you were an operational firefighter 30 years ago or so.
Anything like it. I think 30 years ago, state of the art was an Austin tanker when I started in the mid-70s. But innovation really is part of a CFA, and really innovation is part also of the volunteer movement and also our paid staff. You find in those days, in the mid-70s, there was no heat shielding on trucks. There were petrol trucks which used to vaporise. There were petrol pumps which were not as reliable as they should have been. There was no protective clothing. The radios were in a rudimentary state, I guess I'd say, whereas with this tanker that we see beside us, a really modern tanker, much more crew protection, much safer for crew in the event of a mishap. It's extraordinary innovation, and I think you're only seeing the start of it. In the very near future, I think you'll see another quantum leap in relation to firefighting equipment.
What sort of radios did you have?
Well, in those days you used to have high-frequency radios, line-of-sight type equipment. We used to have, I won't mention the brand names because we don't regard them fondly, but we used to have radios that were 50s and 60s technology, just weren't up to the date, up to the standard it was required. And now I think we're leaders in digital technology, and I think that'll augurs well for the future.
And I suppose when you first joined, the clothing you wore was totally different to today.
It has. In the era when I started, you had a pair of Yakka overalls, you thought yourself fairly lucky with a pair of elastic-sided boots. Now we're into some quite sophisticated technology for firefighting, and I think going on into the future, the research will deliver even more positive results for fire service.
Now, the business of fighting fires nowadays is really an international issue, it seems. How does the CFA and the other agencies shape up on the international front?
It does. Well, the first thing to say, I guess, is Victoria or southeastern Australia is amongst the worst areas in the world for wildfire. So it's natural for us to partner with people such as the Canadians and the Americans. And we do that not on a basis of sharing resources, more on a basis of sharing technology and sharing experience. And in fact, this year, again, there are people from Victoria over in Canada with their wildfires.
And as far as working relationships are concerned with the other agencies like DSC, how are they?
Well, you know, there's always a bit of friendly competition, like between football teams, I guess, in some cases. But I have to say, over the last 3 months, perhaps longer, while this emergency has been developing for a forthcoming fire season, the cooperation between the agencies, ourselves and DSE, Metropolitan Fire Service, SES and the police, it's just been extraordinary, and I think that will all be to our good in the months leading up to a fire season.
So what in your mind are the major threats?
Well, the major threats clearly are areas of heavy fuel, particularly with the underlying drought that's been around for a long period of time. In a previous period, I guess we looked at Ash Wednesday as the worst we could get. Now it's clear to us, at least, with climate change, that we're going to get potentially more days like Black Saturday, and I just think we have to respond to that, particularly in those areas of high fuel. That's often in a ring of 100 kilometres out from Melbourne and some other provincial centres, and we'll be doing a lot for the community to identify those areas and looking at what we can do about it.
Kerry Murphy, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, John.